This will be a longer review, so let's get right into it. Servus Freunde, my name is Jimmy Cage and it's time for a new Terminator movie. Or is it actually time to give up this franchise once and for all? Most people would agree that the only two great entries are the first two. Everything after that is okay at best and downright terrible at worst. That's probably the reason the newest one goes the same route as the latest Halloween. Just ignore all the bad or mediocre sequels and instead make a direct follow-up to the first two films. They are also the only two James Cameron was involved with, and as you know from the trailer, the sixth movie in the Terminator franchise was directed by Deadpool director Tim Miller, after a screenplay by David S. Goya, Justin Rhodes and Billy Ray, based on a story by James Cameron, Charles H. Egley, Josh Friedman, David S. Goya and Justin Rhodes. I think we have to say it as it is. The Terminator franchise has long become a parody of itself. Its lore so muddled, its time travel plot so convoluted, its recasting so numerous, its tone so all over the place. And even the promise of retconning everything and going back to the roots didn't really give me any hope. The trailers looked like the same old Terminator action schlock, and bringing back Linda Hamilton as a tough-as-nails 60-year-old killing machine, again very similar to the recent Halloween, is somewhat neat, but doesn't really scream high-quality fresh new take on the same old Terminator formula. But as it turns out, Terminator Dark Fate is at least better than I expected, and I would say the best entry since the underwhelming but very watchable Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines. The first 55 minutes or so are actually really gripping with some intense and great, mostly practical action set pieces. Now as always I will try to keep this review as spoiler free as possible, but there are some aspects of the story and direction I want to talk about or at least hint at because they were very crucial for what I thought about the film. So if you think your experience of the film might be spoiled by some plot details, I would urge you to come back after you've seen it. Overall I thought Terminator Dark Fate was alright, and if you have any interest in the franchise left, check it out. I have to come back yet again to the strange nature of this franchise. If I'm being completely honest, I would say that the second film is already pushing the boundaries of its concept to the limit, both in terms of the story and the believability. The first film was this perfect time travel, causality loop, horror action thriller. The sequel amped up the action, increased the scale of the story and also made Arnie's character the good guy, which was a clever and fun twist on the first film. Now, I'm no storyteller, but I would say that's pretty much it for the Terminator series before it falls into the well of absurdity. How often do you want to push the date of Judgment Day? How often do you want to send just one good and one bad Terminator back in time as a last resort? Dark Fate tries to get rid of the time travel mess, the shifting tones, and by now generic action schlock of the last three movies by retconning them, and for a time it almost works out before it goes down the same route again, giving us some time travel mess, shifting tones, and generic action schlock. It starts perfectly though, alternating and arranging the logos of the production companies with camera footage of Linda Hamilton's Sarah Connor from the second film, showing her in the mental institution, making clear just how deadly of a threat the Terminator is. We are then treated to a terrific apocalyptic Terminator war scene, very much in the vein of those future depictions of the first two movies, before finding out that Sarah and John have changed the future forever and prevented the rise of the machines. We then get a clear filmic statement that everything after the second movie is retconned, and that moment can feel like a big betrayal, I guess. I can't say what it is, but the perception of it was so weird, and I think there are two main reasons here. One, it has been such a long time since the second film, and two, we know that the way the scene has been done is fake, as in even more fake than everything else is anyway in the filmic process of make-believe. I think you will know what I mean once you've seen the film. But it is at least quite interesting, and I have to give the film this. It is interesting, it is weird, and I don't think you can do a straight sequel to any Terminator movie without it being weird, but you certainly can do one that's uninteresting. And Dark Fate is certainly not uninteresting. But what I really liked about the first act of the film is that they really play it serious. There are some minor comedic bits, the mandatory Terminator needs your clothes moment for example, but overall the tone is very sincere and the way our new adversaries are put against each other feels very raw and brutal. Gabriel Luna plays the new Terminator, the best of both worlds if you will. He's similar to the liquid metal model from the second film, but he also has a robotic steel skeleton, just in case, and both his forms can move and fight together or act independently of each other. It could have easily come across as too goofy or too much, but I think it was a neat progression. Though I wish they would have done more with it as far as the action goes. In any case, I thought Gabriel Luna, like Robert Patrick before him, has an ordinary and yet very menacing presence. Mackenzie Davis plays Grace, a hybrid cyborg human, of course also from the future, sent to protect a young girl. Davis is good in the role, delivering both the physical action as well as the emotional moments. Nothing really comes close to the sheer endless devotion Michael Biehn brought as Kyle Reese in the first film. It sure helped that he was just a human, posed against a ruthless killing machine of the likes of Arnold Schwarzenegger, but what Dark Fate was able to convey emotionally was more than I had expected. The young girl goes by the name of Daniela Ramos, or just Dani. She's played by Natalia Reyes, and she's a mixture of Sarah Connor from the first and Sarah Connor from the second film. The whole story of Dark Fate is pretty much a remake or reboot of the first two movies, of which one of them more than the other is only revealed as the movie goes along, and Linda Hamilton is even commenting which new character is the equivalent to which already known one. Yeah, it can get quite tongue-in-cheek and I think that's where it falters. Like I said, I don't know if you can make these Terminator movies without getting into territory where you just have to self-reference its absurd, messy nature. Films like the Back to the Future trilogy or the two Happy Death Day movies are comedies and they have it way better to play with their own crazy rules. But with Terminator, it always takes away something from the dark, brutal core nature of the story. Up until the moment the old Sarah Connor appears on screen, this is a pretty lean sci-fi action movie, very familiar because it's like a modern remake, but crafted quite impressively. There's an early action set piece on the highway that I think is easily the highlight of the entire film. Once Linda Hamilton shows up, we start getting those familiar one-liners, but it's still fine and Hamilton is in great shape, physically and acting-wise. To see her team up with Grace and Dani and form this trio of humanity's last hope is powerful. In a later big action set piece, the film splits them up in another intense encounter with the new Terminator, and it's another very good sequence. It's also great to feel more of that brutality the Terminator is able to unleash, because after the last two movies, we are finally back to an R rating and I think it definitely helps the film. But of course, it isn't just Linda Hamilton who's returning. Our beloved Austrian oak Arnold Schwarzenegger is reprising his iconic role as the T-800. Now here it becomes really difficult because Terminator without Arnie doesn't feel right, but every Terminator movie after the second one with Arnie also have to find a way not only to incorporate him into the story in a way that makes sense, but also in a way that explains his age and also make it so that it doesn't feel just ridiculous. The challenge of keeping Arnie was actually already posed with the second film, but Cameron made it work. Now, as weird as it may sound, I think once Arnie shows up in Dark Fate, it becomes a worse movie, and because of all the reasons I mentioned before that troubled the franchise for the longest time. It definitely becomes a funnier film and I can't deny that I laughed out loud several times, but did I really want this to be a laugh out loud movie? It becomes more self-referential, it becomes goofier, you get the music cue, the sunglasses, more of the one-liners. But just regarding the story, I don't think you would have needed him in it at all. But of course, you somehow need him because it's Terminator and because it's Arnie, so it's a double-edged sword. But without spoiling it, I have to point out that I thought the way they justified his being there was absolutely ludicrous. It directly goes back to the beginning. It was a weird situation. It is our perception of Arnold Schwarzenegger and a long memory of him being the good Terminator in so many movies that we are able to buy into the reason behind his character in Dark Fate. But strictly speaking, from the actual story they present in the film, I don't buy it for a second. It is so far-fetched and that's really all I can say here. Or let me just add one thing. It establishes a known science fiction theme that's very interesting on its own, but that doesn't fit into this movie and they don't really explore it at all. It also goes against the raw, brutal action thriller notion they want to reintroduce to the franchise. Having said all that, to see Arnie on screen was fun nevertheless. Not so much fun though was the action choices for the last act and the way it was presented to us. The moment I saw those wild airplane scenes at night in the first teaser, I feared that this movie would turn out as another ridiculous, exaggerated action schlockfest, similar to Terminator Genesis. That's why I was very delighted that most of the action in the film felt rather grounded and had some weight to it. Well, I don't think the last act can hold up with that. There are definitely some neat moments in there, but there's also so much crazy stuff happening and so many video game-like boss fight bits that it couldn't finish with a big bang. So, in German I'd say, Terminator Dark Fate schafft es zeitweise wirklich gut, den rohen, brutalen und existenziellen Kampf die Zukunft der Menschheit wieder greifbar zu machen. Mit fortlaufender Spieldauer stolpert der Film dann aber doch wieder über die üblichen Probleme der Franchise. Interessant und unterhaltsam ist er aber durchaus. I give Terminator Dark Fate 6 out of 10. It's more like 6.3, but I don't do that. Alright, that's it like always. Comment below and let me know what you think about Terminator Dark Fate. And also let me know what is your favorite entry in the franchise. The first one or the second? Or are you totally crazy and say another one? And also, what is your favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger movie in general? You can hit me up on Twitter, Instagram and Letterboxd simply at the Jimmy Cage. And if you enjoyed this episode, please give me a thumbs up, share, subscribe, whatever you like. And make sure you hit that bell for all I have to tell.